It was late September 1982 in Chicago. The air was getting crisp. Kids were back in school. Life was just going on like it always does, but then something terrible happened. Something nobody saw coming. And it changed everything. A young girl named Mary Kellerman got sick. Really sick. She was only 12. Her parents gave her some Tylenol for a cold. A common painkiller, right? Something everyone had in their medicine cabinet. Mary collapsed. She died soon after. Her family was devastated. Doctors couldn't figure out why a healthy girl would just drop dead like that. It was a mystery, but it wasn't just Mary. A few days later, a man named Adam Janis, 27, also collapsed. He was fine one minute, then gone the next. His family gathered, heartbroken. His brother Stanley and Stanley's wife Teresa came to comfort everyone. They were grieving. And then the unthinkable happened again. Stanley got a headache. Well, Teresa felt sick. They both took Tylenol from the same bottle Adam had used. They both collapsed. They both died. Now, people were really confused and scared. What was happening? Why were healthy people suddenly dying? And why did Tylenol seem to be involved in these cases? It didn't make any sense. The deaths kept coming. Mary Reiner, a new mother, took Tylenol after giving birth. She collapsed. She died. Paula Prince, a flight attendant, bought Tylenol at a drugstore. She took it in her hotel room. She died. All young, all seemingly healthy, all had taken Tylenol. This wasn't just a string of bad luck. This was something else entirely. And the question everyone asked, the one that still hangs heavy in the air, is who killed Chicago's Tylenol victims with cyanide? Because that's what it was, cyanide, a deadly poison slipped into medicine. A madman or madwoman was out there, and they were playing a terrifying game. But no one has ever been charged with these murders. The killer got away. And that's the brutal truth of it. The police and medical examiners were working overtime. They were desperate to find a link. Doctors noticed a pattern. The Janis family, for example, all showed the same bizarre symptoms: sudden collapse, unresponsiveness, dilated pupils, no clear cause of death at first glance. It wasn't a heart attack, it wasn't a stroke, it was something faster, more brutal. A doctor named Thomas Kim, who treated the Janis family, was one of the first to connect the dots. He saw the multiple deaths in one family and thought, this isn't natural, something is very wrong here. Then, a fire department lieutenant, Frank Schultz, had a gut feeling. He was talking to a detective about the Janis deaths. He remembered hearing about Mary Kellerman. He asked about the medicine the victims took, and Tylenol came up. That's when the light bulb went off. Could it be the Tylenol? It seemed impossible. Tylenol was a trusted brand, but the police started pulling the bottles. They sent them to labs, and that's when the horror became real. Inside some of the Tylenol capsules, instead of pain medicine, there was pure deadly cyanide. Not a little bit. Enough to kill a person quickly, brutally. The news hit like a bomb. People panicked. Imagine opening your medicine cabinet and realizing something you trusted, something meant to help, could actually kill you or your child. Fear was instant and widespread. People were told not to take Tylenol, not to buy it. If they had it, they should throw it out. Police cars drove through neighborhoods, blaring warnings from loudspeakers. Supermarket aisles were stripped of Tylenol. Pharmacies pulled bottles from their shelves. It was an unprecedented public health crisis. Johnson & Johnson, the makers of Tylenol, faced a nightmare. Their product was tainted. People were dying. They had to act fast, and they did. They pulled all Tylenol products from store shelves nationwide. That was 31 million bottles. An estimated $100 million recall. It was a massive, expensive decision. But it was the right one. They put people's safety first. Their chairman, James Burke, spoke to the public directly, honestly. He didn't try to minimize it. He said they would do everything to solve it and make things safe again. This was a moment that would later be taught in business schools as a model for crisis management. But at the time, no one was thinking about business models. They were thinking about death. About a killer out there somewhere who had found a way to turn everyday medicine into a weapon. The investigation became huge. The FBI, local police from multiple jurisdictions, the FDA, everyone was involved. This wasn't just a local murder, this was a national terror attack. They had to figure out how the cyanide got into the capsules and who put it there. They looked at the capsules themselves. The cyanide wasn't just mixed in. The capsules had been opened, emptied, filled with cyanide, and then carefully put back together. It was meticulous. It was deliberate. Investigators went to the stores where the poison Tylenol was bought. They checked batch numbers, and that's where it got even more confusing. The poison bottles came from different manufacturing batches. They were bought in different stores across a wide area in Chicago and its suburbs. This meant the tampering likely didn't happen at the factory or at a central distribution center. It had to happen somewhere along the line locally. Or, most chillingly, the killer had bought the Tylenol, tampered with it, and then placed it back on different store shelves. That idea made everyone's skin crawl. The hunt for the killer was relentless. Thousands of tips came in. Every lead was followed. But there were no witnesses, no security cameras in stores like there are today, no direct forensic evidence on the capsules that pointed to a specific person. It was a ghost hunt. Still, a few strong suspects emerged. The most infamous, and still the prime suspect for many, was James Lewis. He was a strange character, a man with a murky past. He lived in New York at the time, but he had connections to Chicago. He sent an extortion letter to Johnson & Johnson. In it, he demanded $1 million to stop the killings. The letter was chilling. It seemed to come from someone who knew what was happening. Lewis had a history of fraud. He'd even been involved in a grisly murder of an elderly man years before, though he was never convicted of that. He was clearly a disturbed individual. His wife, Nancy, also had a strange connection. She had previously worked for a company that had some dealings with Johnson & Johnson. This made the link even more suspicious. The FBI arrested James Lewis for the extortion. They felt he was their guy. But arresting someone for extortion is one thing. Charging them with murder is another. They needed solid evidence directly linking him to the poisoning of the capsules or placing him at the stores where the tampered bottles were found. They couldn't find it. Despite his suspicious letter, his strange behavior, and his background, the direct, irrefutable proof needed to secure a murder conviction just wasn't there. He always denied the murders. He served time for the extortion, but he was never charged with the Tylenol deaths. He remains a person of interest, a shadow in the corner of this unsolved mystery, even decades later. He recently died, taking any potential secrets with him. Another person of interest was Roger Arnold. He was a troubled man from the Chicago area. He had a vendetta against the Tylenol manufacturer employee. The police investigated him thoroughly. He even had cyanide in his possession. His behavior was erratic. He was obsessed with the case, but ultimately the evidence against him wasn't strong enough either. He was clear, though he remained a person, some people pointed to. He spent some time in prison for unrelated crimes, including a shooting that was linked to his paranoia about the Tylenol case. But the Tylenol murders themselves, no solid link. Other theories were explored. Could it have been someone working at a manufacturing plant? No, because the tampered bottles came from different batches made at different plants. Could it have been someone at a distribution center? Less likely for the same reason, and the geographic spread of the purchase. The most chilling theory, and one that still makes the most sense to investigators, is that the killer bought the Tylenol, tampered with it at home, and then meticulously placed the poison bottles back on various store shelves. This would explain the different locations and batches. It also makes the killer seem like someone who truly wanted to cause terror and chaos, rather than target a specific person or company. But without a witness, without a direct fingerprint, or a clear connection to the cyanide itself, the Who remained a terrifying blank. The case went cold, the files remained open, but no one was ever brought to justice for the murders of Mary Kellerman, Adam Janis, Stanley Janis, Teresa Janis, Mary Reiner, and Paula Prince, or the other victims whose lives were cut short. The families were left with unimaginable grief and no closure. That's a heavy burden to carry. To know someone murdered your loved one in such a horrific way, and they just vanished into thin air. But the Tylenol murders changed things profoundly. Even if the killer was never caught, their actions had a massive, lasting impact on America. The biggest change was in product safety. Before 1982, it was common for medicines and food products to have simple screw caps. You could open them easily. After Tylenol, everything changed. Companies scrambled to develop tamper-evident packaging. Those foil seals you peel off every time you open a new bottle of medicine. The plastic bands around caps, the safety buttons on jars that pop up if they've been opened, all of those became standard because of the Tylenol murders. This wasn't just for medicine. It became the norm for food, for drinks, for just about anything you bought. It was a direct, industry-wide response to the terror of the poison Tylenol. And it cost companies billions, but it was absolutely necessary to restore public trust. The government also responded. The Federal Anti-Tampering Act was passed in 1983. This made product tampering a federal crime. It gave law enforcement more power to investigate and prosecute such acts. It was a clear message mess with public safety in this way, and you'll face severe consequences. Johnson & Johnson's handling of the crisis became legendary. Their decision to recall all Tylenol, despite the massive cost, was brave. Their transparency and quick action were key. They rebuilt their brand from the ground up, reintroducing Tylenol in tamper-proof packaging. They prioritized people over profit, and in the long run, it saved their company. It showed that integrity, even in the face of disaster, can pay off. But for the public, something was lost. A kind of innocence. Before Tylenol, you mostly assumed that what was in the package was what it said on the label. You trusted it. After Tylenol, people started checking, they looked for broken seals, they were wary. That deep, unquestioning trust in everyday products was shaken forever. It made people more vigilant, yes, but it also introduced a subtle, persistent undercurrent of fear. For law enforcement, the Tylenol murders were a brutal training ground. It refined methods for handling wide-scale, anonymous threats. It showed the need for unprecedented cooperation between local, state, and federal agencies. This wasn't a bank robbery, this was a new kind of crime, diffuse and terrifying. Even today, the case isn't closed. It can't be. Every few years, there's a renewed interest. New forensic techniques emerge. Investigators re-examine old evidence. They look at the cyanide. They look for any stray fibers, any trace DNA that might have been missed in 1982. But the chances of a breakthrough shrink with each passing year. The killer, if they are still alive, is an old person now. And the trail is very, very cold. The Tylenol murders left a deep scar on Chicago. And on the nation. It was a moment of true terror, a time when an unknown killer held a whole country hostage with a few poison pills. The victims' names are remembered, their families' pain continues, and the changes wrought by this crime are still with us every time we unwrap a new product, every time we break a seal. It's a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we can be, and how a single act of anonymous evil can reshape an entire society. We still don't know who did it, and that more than anything is the most unsettling part of the story. The madman or madwoman who killed those Chicago Tylenol victims with cyanide simply walked away, and they were never seen again.